As I was looking at the agenda, I was looking at every presentation title, and I felt that Lessons from the Gym was the happiest title there. I mean, so happy that actually made people wonder what kind of medication is the speaker taking, to come up with this kind of title. But then again, that's exactly what you need at this point in time of the day. Some energetic, some different perspective about things. I'll tell you more. You actually need slides with no numbers and no text. Really simple, at least for the first slide. So the point I want to make here is that there are similarities between the things that we do in the gym, particularly like bodybuilding, and the SDL. For example, both are a long-term process thing. In other words, you don't implement SDL from night to day. It takes a long time. It does require some heavy lifting. People have some resistance to actually implement SDL. It needs a very focused effort, right? And actually, people fail for quite the same reasons in the gym and also when implementing SDL. And basically, the reason they fail is because they fail to actually track their progress. In other words, to get metrics about what they're doing. At the end of this talk, what I want you to get home is basically a couple very easy to gather and very effective metrics. In other words, metrics that are meaningful to your organization. And again, keep them to a minimum. If I show you more than like 3 or 4 different metrics in this presentation, that would be too much, right? A couple of the things that the metrics are good for is where to invest your resources. You're finding vulnerabilities, let's say, in a pen test, that's great. Were you able to actually find the same vulnerabilities, but earlier in the development lifecycle? How do you compare with your competition? Are they getting more vulnerabilities than you? What kind of things do you have to actually teach people when you're teaching your class? Just because a WASP has the top 10 doesn't mean it's the top 10 for your company. So those are a couple of the things that we're going to actually see in this presentation. So who am I? I'm obviously not a bodybuilder. Why you should listen to me, besides the fact that I have a microphone? Basically, I work for the big yellow, Symantec, which is the #1 security company out there. And I'm a senior manager of a team called the Product Security Team. My team is responsible for the entire SDL in the company. In other words, penetration test, threat modeling, all the security training that goes there. And I share this responsibility with another manager. So we're just responsible for no less than 200 products that the company ships. Besides that, I'm also the OWASP chapter leader in Los Angeles. So if you ever want to drive a little bit, see some good talks, meet some different people, that's one of the good places to go. Since this is a academia presentation, I thought I should purchase some of my education credentials here. So I'm an MBA from USC. I have a master's in software engineer. I have a computer science degree. And I also helped to create a certification called the CSSLP from ISC Square. And again, when I'm not in the office, I'm doing other things. I like to think I have a life. I'm playing volleyball. Sometimes I'm coding because I really have fun doing it. And sometimes I go to the gym, which brings me back to the topic of this presentation. I believe that most of you, regardless of what kind of methodology you develop your software and you follow, you have something like that. You go through a design cycle, code, test, and you sustain your product, you support your product. Doesn't matter if you're doing Scrum, or if you're doing Agile, if you're doing Waterfall or Spiral, that's what you do. Now if you look at the metrics that you use for every single phase of the SDLC, the metrics are quite messy. For example, design. A lot of people in the design likes to do threat model. Microsoft told us that while doing threat model, the thing you have to do is look at stride and dread. And those are the two metrics that you have for threat model. For coding, a lot of people just get the bugs they find or vulnerabilities they find during a source code review, and they file to a bug system. Sometimes they file and there's a checkbox which says it's a security bug, it's not a security bug, or something like it's a security bug, please specify. And that's pretty much it. Different people have different metrics here, but you can see that the metrics just don't match. And when you go to testing and you work, for example, with vendors to do penetration testing, at least from my experience, every single vendor that I work, they have some very thoughtful metrics. However, every single vendor had a different type of metric, right? Which is kind of weird because suddenly you want to compare all those results and you can't. And when you go to support and sustaining, when you're talking about vulnerability management, the metrics are completely different again. My experience with the gym is quite simple. Basically, when I look at every phase of the SDLC, I just think about a different exercise. I'm exercising a different kind of muscle, right? And the kind of metrics that I get when I go to the gym are very simple. Here's, for example, what a gym workout sheet would look like. You have the number and the name of the exercise, right, that you do. You have the number of repetitions, and you also have the weight, or in other words, the intensity of that exercise. Everything is about how much weight you can actually lift. That's very simple, very easy to gather, very effective. Tells you where you were and where you're going. Now let's get back to the SDL and see what would be a good security metric. Basically, instead of having a name of exercise, what I would suggest people to start doing is to use CWE, the Common Weakness Enumeration. You might not have heard about CWE yet. I'm going to explain later. But for now, just take it's a number. Okay? It's just a sequential number. For example, cross-site scripting would be number 79. Buffer overflow would be number 119, and so forth. It's just a number to specify the type of vulnerability you found during, one of the parts of your SDLC. Then you have repetitions. In other words, repetitions is just the number of findings that you had of that category. So for example, you have 10 cross-site scripting vulnerabilities, you just write 10, right? Or one entry in your spreadsheet after the other. And then you have the intensity. For the intensity, one of the ways that you can actually capture that is using something called CVSS, the Common Vulnerability System. And basically, for now, if you haven't actually seen that, just think it's a number that goes from 0 to 10. 0 is, it's not a vulnerability, why should I bother? To 10, which is, it's a earth-shattering vulnerability. It scored the highest number that it could score. Once you have that, you just have to think again that every single phase in your gym workout is just a different phase of the SDLC. Of course, I don't want you to have a piece of paper actually tracking all those things, but you get the idea. We're going to talk about automation and how to get this in an Excel spreadsheet or a database later, but this is the main idea of the thing.